everybody. Welcome in, welcome in, welcome in to Book Passage Live. It's very nice to see you all today. We'll give it just a minute or two for everybody else to roll in. And as such, I'll try to do my introduction as slow as possible, but I'm very excited to have everybody here today. It's honestly going to be one of my, this is going to be one of the most excellent events that we're going to have. I'm very, very excited for it. So to that regard. Hello everybody, my name is Nick Mitchell, I work with Book Passage, and welcome to Book Passage Live. We here at the bookstore are very excited to bring to you some of the best authors and conversations you can find out there on the internet. If you have seen one of these events before, then welcome back. We're very, very glad to have you. And if you are new here, then welcome. Book Passage is an independently run bookstore out of the San Francisco Bay Area, and back when events weren't quite so dangerous for everybody, we used to hold book talks just like these at our bookstore all the time. As we are now streaming on YouTube, and I think we'll continue to do so in the future, at least to some regard, or at least in some regard, please consider subscribing to our YouTube channel by clicking the subscribe button down below. Oh, I'm going to mute one of our guests just a second. Okay, continuing on. Please consider clicking the subscribe button down below. It honestly doesn't cost you anything, and it really, really truthfully does help us out by feeding our overlord, the YouTube algorithm. If additionally you click the notification bell, which is right next to the subscribe button, you'll be alerted every single time we go live or post a pre-recorded author interview as we do from time to time. If you would like to check out tonight's book, Fire in Paradise, or anything else that we have mentioned here tonight, you can find it all at bookpassage.com. I'll be sure to put the link in the YouTube chat in just a minute, and it is also in the description of this video's description down below. If you have any questions for tonight's speakers, we will have a point during the night where we will start answering questions. As they come to your head, you could write them in the YouTube chat, just to the right of the screen or just below the screen, depending on how you're watching things. And I will be the one to find them, and I'll pass them along to our speakers and guests. We don't get to everything, always, but regardless, your questions, comments, praise are always, always appreciated, and we always find them and see them afterwards. Now then, on to our guest tonight. Oops, sorry, this little preview of our guest. On to our guests. Our authors tonight for the book are Dani, I should have asked ahead of time, Anguiano, who is a writer for The Guardian and was a reporter for the Chico Enterprise Record. She lives in the San Francisco Bay Area and is one half of our book of the authors for our book tonight. Our second half is Alastair G., who is an award-winning editor and reporter for The Guardian, who has also written for The New Yorker Online, The New York Times, and The Economist. In conversation with our two authors tonight, we have both Iris Natividad and Sky Sedgwick. Iris is from Paradise, California, and is an entrepreneurial business person who has lived in the Ridge for 20 years. She was an early member of an innovative software provider company who has partnered with the California DMV to automate electric vehicle registrations. She also championed the pink ribbon license plate in California, if you've seen those around. She was one of the people that championed those. Sky is from Magalia, California. Since the fire that took so much from her, she has moved to be closer to her son and grandchild in Albuquerque, New Mexico, where there is currently a monsoon right now. So this is the little bit of the technical difficulties we're having here. We're going to power through, I believe in us. Her daughter, who lives in South Carolina, is currently expecting grandchild number 2. So exciting. Although she is still awaiting her settlement from PG&E, when she receives it, she plans to return to Magalia and rebuild. Everyone, I'm so excited for tonight's conversation. It's going to be really, really excellent, and we are so lucky to have all of these cool people here with us. Let me get out of the way. Please, if you are watching us tonight or in the future, we are doing our absolute darndest to deal with the technical problems right now, but unfortunately, like apparently Albuquerque, New Mexico is having just like some really, really crazy times right now. So we know we know, if the tech issues do pop up, we're aware of them. We're going to try and deal with them in the background. Nonetheless, let's move on to our guests. Thank you very much for coming tonight.
Thank you so much for having us Nick. It's a real pleasure to be with the Book Passage, a bookstore I love, and well, firstly, I'm here with three remarkable people. I'm here with my co-author Dani Anguiano, and we're also here with two of the people from our book, Two Fire Survivors. And this is the first event that we have appeared at with these people that we got to know so well in the writing of the book. So it's a really special event for me. We thought that the way we would do this is that Dani and I would read from the book for the first 10 minutes or so, and we're going to read you passages about Iris and Sky, our two guests here tonight. And then maybe for the next 20 minutes to 30 minutes after that, Dani and I would have a conversation with Iris and Sky about their experiences. And then at the very end, we'd come to audience questions. Dani, I'll pass it over to you. Should we maybe set the scene for the bit we're about to read, and then yeah.
Sure. Just to echo Alastair, I'm so excited to be here, particularly with Alastair, my wonderful co-author, but also Iris and Sky, who are two really incredible, strong women who, after experiencing, one of the most disastrous events in American history, were willing to share their stories with us and tell us about what they lost and what made this place so special. So to get started, I am going to read a brief passage that takes place shortly after what's called the campfire has started. This is early in the morning of November 8th, 2018. And Sky, who is here with us now, in the book at this point, she's just learning about what's happening in this massive fire that is racing toward Paradise and Magalia and these communities of more than 30,000 people. So I will get started with that. At 8:30 a.m. on November 8th, 2018, John Sedgwick pounded on his daughter's bedroom door. "Fire's coming up over the ridge, Sky," he told her, his voice calm but loud, a sign of his increasing deafness. Sky got up quickly. Sedgwick was not an alarmist. John knew fire, and if he considered it serious, it was. As part of a career that included periods as a museum docent, a logger for the Forest Service, and an orderly at a state hospital, Sedgwick had spent years as a volunteer firefighter on the Paradise Ridge, a forested perch in the foothills of California's Sierra Nevada mountain range. He'd been living here in the community of Magalia, just north of Paradise, off and on since he first visited as a child. More than 70 years later, Sedgwick still resided in the same house, a century-old two-bedroom cabin with orange walls and a bathtub on the back porch. Sky, who had recently turned 50, had moved in with him a couple years ago when she was recovering from various health problems. As smoke lingered in the air, Sky, fresh out of the shower, hurriedly gathered the things she'd need: clothes, shoes, and the makeup bag she never left home without. The Sedgwick's rambling property was dotted with John's vintage vehicles, including an ancient flatbed truck and a faded red 1940s-era bulldozer. Its environs were magnificent. The inhabitants of the town of Paradise and the smaller communities that surrounded it spent their days among a gorgeous profusion of pines and oaks and wildflowers. More and more, it was becoming a refuge for people priced out of the rest of the state, where the cost of living had risen to untenable levels. Occasional wildfires broke out near the ridge, but Sedgwick, and nearly anyone who had ever paid much attention, knew that the area could face a real fire, a bad one. People prepared for the worst, but they didn't always comprehend how awful the worst could be. When the fire risk was high, Sedgwick made the same plea as he and his daughter sat down for meals. "Please, Jesus, no fires today." After packing, Skye walked outside to where her father stood in the yard. Dad, is there something I should do? Should I wet the ground? John Sedgwick shook his head. When she returned with her bag, Sedgwick told her that he would stay, for now. Skye, an auburn-haired artist who used to work as a counselor in a juvenile detention center, was planning to meet her boyfriend at a gas station a mile or so down the road. She took a few steps and paused. Still holding her bags and her dog, Skye hugged her trim, compact father goodbye. He grunted when she said, "I love you," but she knew that that meant "I love you too." The road that curved past their home was already blocked and nearly at a standstill with cars trying to evacuate. "Don't go that way," Sedgwick had warned Skye. She set off down a quiet lane leading away from their house, shaded by ponderosa pines and Douglas firs, until she was just far enough from the cabin that Sedgwick wouldn't have heard her if she had yelled. She could see flames catching in the undergrowth and thought about turning back to tell him how bad things were, but decided against it. He knows, she thought to herself. Sedgwick was stubborn. There was no getting him to change tack once he had made a decision. Dad will leave if it gets bad, she thought. Skye moved even more quickly, through the smoke and up onto an embankment that she used where the road became impassable. Ethereal bits of glowing dust fell from the sky. Skye watched them uneasily. Embers, she thought.
I'm going to read a page or two about Iris now, and this is where we first meet Iris in the book, and it starts with Iris's impressions of paradise and how she ended up there. For Iris Natividad, paradise represented safety, at least in the beginning. She and her partner of 28 years, Andrew Downer, moved to town in 2015. It was their second time living in the area. They had left in 2004 for a lovely home in an out-of-the-way hamlet called Bangor, but the lack of cell service and the encroaching fires made them nervous. Natividad and Downer were physical opposites. She, a sparky 5'1" DMV consultant who introduced herself as Flower Christmas. He, an irascible 6'6" mechanic with a Father Christmas beard who told off-color jokes that cracked Natividad up. In paradise, they were able to indulge their shared hobby of buying and selling antiques. Paradise, Iris said, was an antiques destination. It was not that paradise was on the same circuit as global contenders like London's Portobello Road. It was this. Everyone was a senior, Iris said. It was a gold mine. The preponderance of elderly people with a lifetime's worth of belongings meant a continually replenishing stock for the numerous antique, vintage, consignment, thrift, and collectible stores. You could spend a whole weekend trawling through them. Andrew relished going to a store with Iris and competing to see who could find the biggest steal, the $500 pitcher priced at $1, for instance. Their thing was glass, and their first love was uranium glass, which contains tiny amounts of the element and glows in the dark, though it's not considered dangerous. Their home, a converted chiropractor's office downtown, was filled with their finds: plates and bowls of green depression glass, a treasured large Heisey decanter in cobalt blue. Andrew had 80,000 marbles in tubs, and there was a gumball machine filled with them on display outside their front door. Friends knew them as fairies, the kind of people who would give you something of theirs if you expressed admiration for it. Their home may have been a collection of everything they loved, but for Andrew, it was also a prison. He had had one foot amputated as a consequence of diabetes, and the other barely worked. Iris worked away from home 4 days a week, from her office in the town of Santa Rosa. And while she was gone, Andrew had great difficulty even making it to the bathroom. He was terrified when she left, his counselor told Iris, and she was frightened for him too. At a wedding party not long after Iris moved back to Paradise, she met a firefighter and asked him about his job. How did he deal with the heat? Why did firefighters sometimes set small fires in order to extinguish larger ones? And also, were the fires getting worse? He knew they were, he told her. California was hotter and drier. It was climate change. He actually opened my eyes to it, Iris said. This was on her mind when, the next year, the fires seemed to be chasing her. There was the LaPorte fire, which destroyed 74 structures in Bangor. The Honey Fire burned 150 acres southwest of Paradise. And there was the Tubbs Fire, which killed 22 people in and around Santa Rosa. Iris said, in every one of those fires, I know many people and many friends who lost homes. They agreed that Andrew needed a vehicle in case he had to evacuate, and Iris purchased an Infiniti SUV for him, a large car they thought he'd be able to maneuver himself into. It's not a matter of if, Iris thought. It's a matter of when. So now we're going to talk with Iris and Sky about some of their experiences. And I think maybe for people who don't know what happened in the fire, I think maybe I'll just say a few words that the fire in Paradise turned out to be the deadliest fire in the US in 100 years. It killed over 80 people, and it's the deadliest ever in California, and it completely ravaged the town of Paradise. But now we'll go to Iris and Sky. I wanted to ask the both of you first, how did you end up in Paradise in the first place?
I can start. So we had moved from Tracy, California, and we had some friends in Oroville that lived on Kelly Ridge. They had 5 acres, and they really loved that area. And there was a lot of antiques, as we both liked. So when we moved up there, or before we moved up there, we were in traveling through Magalia, and I was driving through the town, and I ended up in a ditch because I wasn't familiar with the roads. And within a half an hour, we were able to get out of that ditch. We didn't have cell signal. We couldn't call AAA, but the local people helped us. And that's what made us decide that this would be home for us on the ridge. Within half an hour, we had a guy stop by, had a rope, and in the next 5 minutes, we had a guy stop by, had a truck, and we were just amazed at the help of the community and the friendliness of the people, and we decided this would be where we would call home. How about you, Sky?
My dad would have been one of those people who would have stopped and helped you, Iris. One of the reasons, well, I was born in Butte County, but my parents separated whenever I was very young, and I grew up in Pennsylvania. But after moving to, I'd lived in California when I was in my early 20s for about 6-7 years, and then I moved back to Pennsylvania and raised my family and went to school and had my career. But after finding myself at 50 years old, in empty nest syndrome and single, and my dad was in the same position. He had lost his wife, who he considered the love of his life. She had passed away, and he was alone up on the hill, and I was alone here in Albuquerque. And so we talked, and we thought it would serve us best if we joined forces, and it did. It worked well for us for several years. I cleaned and cooked for him, and he liked that. He liked having somebody at the house, and we made a good team for a little while there. And I've always loved Paradise. Paradise is one of those places when you're not there, you're homesick for it. You think about it, it grabs you, and yeah, it's just one of those places.
Did you all ever expect a fire like what happened in 2018?
I don't think
We were evacuated many times, and I think there was always that potential, but we lived in the downtown area right in the middle, and we never thought that the fire would come to us. We figured we would evacuate, but not to that intensity. And it was always in the back of our mind, but you never thought that it would actually happen.
or that it would burn 20,000 structures,
Yes.
and kill 85 people. That's not something that I could imagine. My dad was very aware of fire danger. We talked about fires. When the wind was high and the temperature was warm and we hadn't had rain, Dad would always talk about fire, and he was afraid of fire. He had a healthy fear of it. But I don't think anybody could imagine what happened on November 8th. I don't think anybody could foreshadow that to the extent that it did, to what occurred.
Yeah. For people who maybe have no conception of what Paradise and Magalia and the rest of the Ridge were like, what are the things you've both mentioned, that the friendliness of the people, and how it's a place that you want to be when you're not there. For people who didn't know it in its heyday when you guys knew it, how else would you describe it? What things stand out for you about it?
Sky, go ahead.
So for me, one of the things that always stood out is when if you were down in Chico, which is about a 20-minute drive south of Paradise, and it would be very, very hot summer day, and you would drive up the hill to Paradise and Magalia, and it would be 10 degrees cooler, and the river was close by, and there are places to swim, and you knew your neighbors. You didn't lock your doors. There was a friendly vibe there that I always felt, and the scenery of it. I mean, it's a beautiful mountain town with tall sugar pines and the smell of serpentine and bay leaves and yeah, it's just a beautiful mountain town, red dirt and green rock.
I always thought that it's like what you were talking about, Sky. It reminds me of living in Tahoe, is the way I look at it. But it's a small town with lots of trees. I mean, that was my most favorite thing about the Paradise, was the trees. You pick favorite trees, and it was just a really nice atmosphere. And it's really, I always say Paradise is, what makes up Paradise is the people. It's really the community of people. Like you said, we never locked our doors. I don't think we even had a key. We had lost our key, and we never locked our doors. We never locked our cars. And we would go to our favorite restaurant. Everybody knew their name. I mean, it's kind of like that Cheers analogy. They knew when we were coming. They knew what our favorite food was. They'd have our coffee ready. Hey, Jim, how you doing? Hey, Steve. That community of people. What are you guys doing today? I mean, the hardware store, people would go to the hardware store and they'd say, how's that project going? Everybody kind of knew what everybody was doing. And it's that small town atmosphere. I had to mail a government letter and the Magalia post office. And I was short like 10 cents or something. And he said it was an important document. And he knew that it needed to get mailed. So he put 10 cents of his own money so that he would make sure that my document would be on time. Now, I don't see in the Bay Area that any postman would do that. And the next time he told me, he goes, hey, I took care of that 10 cents. You owe me 10 cents. Make sure that it's just that small town feel of taking care of each other. If you need some milk, I mean, it's kind of silly, but it's a community of people.
The other
Right,
thing for me was that that the family that I never met, my grandmother and my grandfather and my aunts, that they all passed away before I was born. This was their history. This is where they were, and so it was my tie to my family that I'd never met. So that was the draw for me to that area.
And for those who don't know, as I mentioned, these are really small communities. Paradise has about, pre-fire, it was at about 27,000 people. Magalia around 11,000, I believe. So it's the kind of place where you run into the same people again and again. Now, Iris and Sky, when the fire started on November 8th, you all were both on the ridge. Where were you that morning when this broke out?
Well, for me, Dani, I wasn't there. I was actually in Santa Rosa. So I was working out of town, so I wasn't on the ridge that day. What about you, Sky?
I was asleep and my father woke me up, and so I was up there, and I remember wearing all gray because I thought that it was I don't know, it seems silly, but it seemed appropriate to wear gray. the sky was gray before it turned black. So, yeah.
I wonder if you could both describe what that day was like. Iris, I know that you were off the ridge, but your partner Andrew Downer was on the ridge. Could you both talk us through, the fire broke out at 6:30 a.m. in the morning or so? What did both of your days look like?
Well, for me, it started at 7:47. Andrew got a call from his best friend and said there was a fire. It looked pretty bad and he needed to get ready. He was going to come back and get him. His friend went, he lived in Magalia, went above the ridge and went down to Chico. And when he got to Chico, he said that he couldn't get back up because everything was already closed. So through the day, Andrew and I talked, trying to figure out how somebody could pick him up. And we finally had just said, go call 911. And it was just so hard to try to figure out how to get someone to him because he was not able to get to the car. And he was having a rough week that week, and he wasn't able to get in and out of the bathroom or his wheelchair. We always had to call the fire department. So it was that feeling of helplessness. I couldn't do anything. All I could do is just try to prepare him and say, go outside, wait for the fire department. And it's the one thing I think we all have anxiety is when you can't control a situation. And I think for me, that was really difficult. I couldn't do anything because I wasn't there. If I was there, I would have been able to get him out of the fire, get our animals out. But for me, it was that high anxiety of not able to do anything for him. What about you, Sky?
So for me, it was, I didn't have a driver's license at the time, and fire or not, Dad was a stickler for rules, and you didn't drive a car if you didn't have a driver's license. And so I evacuated on foot.
Wow.
And me and my dog, we evacuated on foot, and I went to go meet my boyfriend at the Fast Strip, the guy I was dating at the time, at the Fast Strip gas station, but he couldn't make it to me, and I couldn't make it to him. And by the time I made it to Old Skyway, I had a car pull up to me, and she said, "What are you doing out here?" And it was one of those moments that everything just kind of hit me at once, that the magnitude of this fire. When this woman is asking me, "Why are you out here walking at the same time, I'm seeing a house that's about a football field away from me on fire. At the same time, I'm hearing the propane tanks exploding. And my dog is looking at this car. She's offering me a ride, but my dog, who's a rescue, and I'd only had, I had for about a couple of years at that point. He was a nervous rescue, and he looked at me like, I'm not getting in this car. And because she had 3 dogs in the back seat, one of them that looked kind of unstable. I mean, the animals were all on heightened alert too, and so that moment will always stick out in my mind of how I recognized how big it was at that moment, and I did decline that ride, but another lady pulled up right afterwards, and I got in the car with her, and my large dog sat on my lap for half of a 7.5-hour drive, which should have only been about a 25-minute drive, but the traffic was so backed up that it took us that long to get to Chico. And the entire time we went up through Butte Meadows, so we could see the fire behind us and the smoke, and it was scary. It was the scariest day of my life. I remember looking behind us and thinking my property had to be on fire at that point. Like, there was no way that my house was not on fire from what I could see. So.
Right. So the day of the fire, Sky, you've just left your dad, you're trying to get out. Iris, you're trying to help your partner, Andrew. What ultimately happens to, Andrew and to John?
So Andrew, at the day of the fire, the last time I spoke to him, he had told me that he didn't think that the fire department was going to get to him because there was over 400 people that were trapped in their home. And the fire department told him, you need to evacuate or try to figure out how you can get out of the house. So he had told me, our last conversation was that it's probably going to be a good day to die because he had no other option. So I just told him, just wait outside and just wait for the fire truck. And we were trying to be positive and, get your meds, get your cell phone and your wallet, and just be prepared, get the dogs prepared. But ultimately, we tried to find them after the cell phones were down and we couldn't contact them anymore. We kept trying the hospitals and any shelters. And eventually on Friday, I did a welfare check through a fire department. And they had called me and said, we found his remains on the front of the home, and there was no body. It was just ash. And that's how I found out that he had perished in the fire. What about you, Sky?
So I'm sorry for your loss, Iris.
And so do you.
My dad stayed and fought the fire all day. He was 82, but he was not like any other 82-year-old that I've ever met, nor do I think I ever will meet. He was in excellent physical condition, and despite, other than his hearing, he was in better shape than I was. He fought the fire all day. He served it, or he worked alongside of other volunteer firemen, and he showed them firefighters who were from out of the area. He was like intel for them, showing them where to go, and he knew that ridge like nobody else. So he was very helpful. A lot of people, I believe he saved a lot of lives and a lot of homes. He was at 10:30 at night. It's my understanding that between 10:30 and midnight, he was at the Depot restaurant, which was an old train depot that was turned into a restaurant, and it already suffered 2 to 3 fires before, and had just recently reopened. He was down there trying to save that historical building, and the sugar pines caught fire, and the the fire company was told to retreat. They were ordered to retreat, and they begged my father to go with them, and he said no. And he said he was going to go up the hill, and I don't know exactly what happened after that. I was just recently told that he was found in his vehicle, although I thought he was found on his porch. I'm not sure which. I didn't find out until 2 weeks after the fire. There were rumors that he was out fighting the fire, but that was something my cousin had said. But I knew that he would not go that long without communicating. That just wasn't like him. He was huge on communication. And this is the man who, when I was 20 years old and I stayed out all night, I came home to a piece of paper on the kitchen counter that just had a question mark on it. So, you know, he was big on communication. That was not something, he would never have gone that long without telling somebody what was going on. So it's my understanding that he died probably around 1 o'clock in the morning of the 9th, trying to save his book, trying to save things and get them in the van, and he just didn't make it.
I'm so sorry for both of your losses. And what strikes me as I hear you talk is how much you've lost. You lost your loved ones, you lost your town, you lost a way of life and a home. How have you grieved that? How have you been able to find your way out of it? What have the years since then looked like for you both?
Sky, you can take that one. This guy there.
Go ahead, Iris. I didn't quite hear that question, but I believe I'll be able to.
So for me, the grieving process has been how I grieve is I want to give back to our community and the people that need help. And I think by giving back and paying forward it helps me heal, and it helps the people that are in need. I'm part of a store in Paradise that we have a carver that carves campfire bears. And I learned for me that people want items from Paradise to help them heal. And if I was helping provide that, it was also helping me heal. So that's kind of what I've done through this process, is just trying to give back and pay forward and meeting other people and talking about what's happened. I know that for me, I've stayed on the ridge because to me, it's talking to my people. I want to be around my people, and that's important to me. Go ahead, Sky. This guy still there?
I'm here, but I'm. You all are breaking up a great deal, and I'm not sure if I am. But I caught a question, and it's just about what things have been like since the fire. You all hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think it's important to note, and I don't know that we've said this yet, that PG&E started that fire. You know, it was PG&E's fault that fire occurred. It was due to faulty equipment, and there's been a lawsuit or bankruptcy and a lot of things going on. So I've tried to be involved in that to an extent. I spoke at the criminal proceedings. It was the company was actually criminally tried and found guilty of manslaughter, 84 counts of manslaughter. You know, I've tried to, by doing this book, and I'm going to be on a television show called American Greed here in July. I've tried to keep my dad's story out there, and I don't want him to be forgotten. you know. So that's one of the things I've done. I've also moved to Albuquerque to be closer to my family, to my grandson, who's 10 months old, and is an absolute just a joy. I mean, he's the opposite of all the darkness in my life. He is the light. It's just incredible, and I'm truly blessed. So.
Do you think that Iris and Sky, do you think you guys will ever live back on the ridge again?
That's my goal.
I know I will.
Yeah, that's I think that's both for both of us. I mean, Paradise is my home, and I did at one time, after my property was cleared, I had a moment that I felt that there was no memory of where we lived, and it was very heartbreaking, and I wanted to move away to Oregon. But I felt that my people and my tribe and my friends, some of them have stayed and some of them have left, and I want to be able to rebuild and be part of the rebuild of Paradise, and that I feel very strongly about that.
I'm currently just awaiting my settlement from the PG&E Fire Victims Trust, where our money has been placed and is slowly being distributed. I'm currently awaiting that, and when I receive that, I plan on rebuilding a house that my father would be proud of, and something that memorializes him, but is also fire
Resistant.
informed, safe if possible, to the best of my ability. I want to be very environmentally conscious and as well as fire conscious in a way that we weren't.
One thing I wanted to ask Sky, and it's okay if you don't want to talk about this sort of publicly, but earlier we talked about some of the difficulties you're facing now because of the delays with PG&E paying out and so forth. You know, if you wanted to talk more about that, great. You know, if not, we can keep that offline. But just opening the space if you wanted to.
I'm good with. I stayed in FEMA housing for 2 years, which was an interesting endeavor. But I'm currently living in my car in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and it's a humbling experience. I have a dog that evacuated with me on November 8th, and he is more important to me than anything. And I can't work like I used to due to my health, and PTSD is a very real occurrence in my life, which causes anxiety and can sometimes paralyze you in a way that I didn't quite grasp until after this fire. So I'm waiting for this settlement offer, and it's just that the trust is being, from a lot of our perspectives, being poorly managed, and it's a frustrating thing to know that the person who is overseeing the trust is making $1,500 an hour while I'm living in my car, and the director is making $1,275 an hour while I'm living in my car. The amount of money this trust has been in
Oh, have we lost Sky? Well, maybe hopefully Sky will come back, and maybe we could open it up to audience questions now. But that Dani and Iris, for me, that point that Sky ended on is so powerful. You know, these problems. Paradise was destroyed. A town of 27,000 people. Now there are maybe 3,000 people living there, and the survivors are not. The settlement money has barely come in, if at all, for many people. life is really hard for people who used to live on the ridge, for many people who used to live on the ridge. And so I think that's a really important point to end on. Yeah, so Nick,
Actually, if I could just add too, I think just to drive home what Sky was saying that I think is so important is this fire was caused by PG&E. It was started by a piece of equipment that failed that was 100 years old. And, you know, PG&E pled guilty to 84 counts of manslaughter and is now, you know, has settled with people for several $billion. However, this is very much still a disaster, as Sky just said. You know, the fact that PG&E, this massive corporation, has made all this profit while Sky is living in her car and while other fire survivors are still struggling is unconscionable. Very much still a disaster for the people who experience this. But with that, we'd love to turn it over to questions from the audience.
We have a question. How will the people of Paradise be safe from fire disaster in the future if and as you rebuild? Iris and Sky, what do you think about that?
Well, I think PG&E is doing underground right now. They're working on that. I think that's part of the plan. Also part of the plan is opening up the lanes on the ridge. Instead of one lane each way, we would have 4 lanes, 2 lanes each way. The evacuation plans. We have many fire resistant home builders now in Paradise. They're very conscious of trying to build housing that would help if there was a fire. So I think there's definitely more effort and thinking about a lot of different things about a potential fire again. It could definitely happen again.
Well, it will. The thing is I believe that we need to learn how to live with fire. And I believe that we need to learn how to build accordingly and how to manage, you know, our spaces with fire in mind. You know, I see certain things, like I see a lot of wooden fences being built, and I shake my head. I don't understand that, you know. But there's just ways that you can build to be more fire safe and resilient, and that's what I plan on doing. I haven't done a lot of that research yet, but that's my intention.
Dani, it strikes me as well that there are, you know, lots of fire codes with a lot of the new construction now in Paradise. Previously, there were a lot of older buildings that weren't necessarily up to fire code just because they were built decades and decades ago. But now, new homes in Paradise, they'll have to follow the various rules, for instance, around having defensible space around your property, around closing off any kinds of openings in the eaves of the roof, for instance, so that embers are not able to blow in. So that kind of thing will help. And I think, Dani, it strikes me as well that there's just been a broad change as well in how we think about fire in California. And I think Sky nailed it on the head, where now people from CAL FIRE are saying, look, we can't avert these mega fires anymore. The climate is changing. As we know, this is an incredibly dry year just this year in California. It follows many other dry years. Fire in California is part of the landscape. It's like rain, and maybe we have to learn how to live with it. What do you think, Dani?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. You know, this last year was, at least in terms of acres burned, 2020 was the worst fire season on record, even if it wasn't as deadly as, you know, the preceding years, 2018, 2019, 2017. It was so staggering. We saw the first gigafire. I think fire is becoming so present that we do have to learn to live with it. And I think that's one of the important things to remember. Is one of the questions that sometimes comes up at these sort of events, and, you know, as we tell these stories, is, well, why would anyone want to live there? And I think Sky and Iris have really hit the nail on the head of why people would want to live there. It's a really lovely place, and so much of the state is at risk for these sort of fires. We can't choose not to live there. What we have to do is choose how to live with it. And I think we're starting to see that. Another question we have here is for Iris and Sky. Have trauma-informed grief helpers, providers, or programs come to your town or to you to help you recover from the shock, grief, loss, and trauma?
Yes, for me, there's been a lot of different agencies that have come up. We are on, at least I am on 211, which is a resource for trauma and counseling. There's many grants that have reached out to a lot of survivors. I've been on 2 of those that I was able to get some grief counseling and just regular counseling, and through grants. I didn't have to pay for them. And I continue to have those counseling services as we go along. And it's definitely been helpful.
Looks like Sky might have dropped off momentarily. Hopefully she'll be back in a sec. Iris, a question for you about the settlement, because obviously that's been extremely, we've all seen the imagery from the courtroom when the PG&E executives appeared in the courtroom, and you and so many of the other survivors addressed these executives, told them about the loved ones you'd lost. This company has, as Dani mentioned, been held responsible for 84 counts of manslaughter, and yet you guys are still not receiving the money that you are owed. Do you know what the holdup is?
None of us know the holdup. It's been so frustrating that I think we just keep asking our lawyers.
I don't know what the holdup is. That's the problem.
Go ahead, Sky. Did we lose her again? Yeah, unfortunately, we just don't know. We don't have the answers. We keep asking for answers and we just don't know.
Okay. Well, to wrap this up, I wonder if you could maybe just share a few, what would you like people to know about Paradise, as we close out the event tonight? The town is rebuilding. You guys, it sounds like, would like to be a part of it. What do you want the rest of the world to know about Paradise?
I think that we're a resilient town, and we have a lot of pioneers with the survivors of Paradise that we want to rebuild. We want it to be an even better Paradise. I mean, we're Paradise strong. That's what we talk about. And it's very important to a lot of us pioneers to be part of the rebuild. And we're going to come back.
Guy, are you on? What do you want people to know about Paradise?
And Magalia.
And Magalia.
Well, and Magalia, I want people to remember. I want people to remember my father, and I want people to remember those who have passed, and campfire, and I want people to know that we are resilient, we are strong, and we're trailblazers, and we will rebuild, and whether we rebuild there or we rebuild someplace else, we will rebuild our lives, and that's important.
Well, Dani, should we maybe just finish? I wanted to just say, thank you to Iris and Sky for sharing your stories with us. I mean, we met Iris and Sky very early on in the process of writing this book, and I feel as though I really learned what it was to be a Paradisian or a Megalian thanks to these two women. And I've been humbled just speaking, hearing both of their stories. So it's been a privilege for me. So thank you very much to Sky and Iris.
If you all can still hear me, I want to thank Dani and Alastair for writing a beautiful account of our story and telling it in a way that I'm proud of. If you haven't read the book, you should. And I want to thank you guys for telling our story.
Yeah, and same with me. I appreciate and honor that you guys told our stories. It's been a huge healing process, and we thank you.
Yeah, thank you both. We are both so eternally grateful that you were willing to share about this very painful part of your lives and tell us about these people. I think that's one of the most important purposes of this book, is not just to tell the story of Paradise and what it means for our future and California's future, but also to commemorate the incredible people who this fire took. And I think the fact that people can get to know them through the book is really meaningful for me, and one of the reasons why I'm so glad that we wrote it. And I hope that everyone will take a moment to read it, because it's an incredible story about really incredible, strong people.
Thanks, Nick.
Thank you.
Back to you. Nick, are you muted?
Oh, because I'm muted. That's why I'm not on the screen. See, I'm a professional producer here. I'm a professional. All right, apologies, everybody. Thank you so much for coming out tonight, everyone. It's really just the pleasure of my personal life, and I assume I speak for the people at the bookstore, or at Book Passage, both in Corte Madera and San Francisco. It is an absolute pleasure to be able to bring to you stories such as these. If you did, I don't know if enjoy is the right word, but if you felt enriched by the conversation tonight, and you either want to read and learn more, you can purchase this book, Fire in Paradise, written by our two lovely authors tonight, from bookpassage.com. The link is in our YouTube chat and in the description below. Even if you can't make it out to our store and you happen to live on the East Coast of the United States, we'll ship it to your house. Easy as any other shipping place. It's easy enough. If you would like to support, if you'd like to support other people, make sure you go out and you can find all of these charities that are helping Paradise, or even more importantly, purchase from businesses that are in Paradise or Magalia or any of the surrounding areas. Just one last time, it's an absolute honor. Thank you again to our authors. Thank you again to our special speakers. We appreciate you very, very much. And just like everybody else who made it here tonight, thank you for coming one last time. We'll see you in the next one. Bye.
Thank you.